So this movie starts on Christmas Eve. We see a couple sleeping and then their daughter comes in. She wakes her mom up and says she sees someone walking on the terrace. Her mom tells her to go back to sleep and says it must be an animal. The little girl says, "But Mom, it could be Santa, right? It's Christmas after all." Her mom says, "Yes, maybe." The girl tells her mom to leave out milk and cookies for Santa, and her mom agrees. She goes to the kitchen and sets out the treats, but when she goes back, she notices the door is open. She thinks maybe her husband forgot to close it when he came home from work, so she closes it and forgets about it. She goes to bed and tells her husband that their daughter left out milk and cookies for Santa. He says okay, and they both fall asleep. Their daughter is still awake, and this time she hears someone walking inside the house. She goes downstairs to check, and she sees Santa standing there. She immediately runs to her brother's room and yells, "Wake up, brother, wake up! Santa is here, come on, let's go see him." But her brother is sound asleep, so she goes back downstairs alone. She doesn't want to miss Santa, but she's starting to get a little scared. As she watches him, she notices something strange about him. She's really scared now and hides behind the door, watching him from there. He takes an axe out of his bag. There's blood on his hands. This isn't Santa, it's R the Clown. He's a maniac, a real monster. He's dressed like a clown, but he's pure evil. R the Clown is really hard to kill. He's a merciless killer. The little girl is terrified. R the Clown goes to the girl's brother's room and attacks him with the axe over and over and over again. He chops off his head, his arms, his legs, everything. He throws the boy's body in a chair, all mangled and broken. The girl hears the noises and gets even more scared. She tries to hide, but R the Clown goes to the girl's parents' room. He goes straight to the dad's chair and starts attacking him with the axe. He's still screaming and hacking at him over and over, and the mom wakes up. She sees blood on her hand. She sits up and sees her husband. His body is torn to shreds, completely destroyed. She's terrified and starts screaming, but R the Clown doesn't stop. He's still killing him. The mom runs out of the room screaming and rushes to her children's room. She sees her son's body. She's devastated and starts crying. She tries to run out of the house, but R the Clown is right there at the door. He throws the axe and kills her. He just stands there, all bloody and horrible, and eats the milk and cookies. He cleans up the plates, all covered with blood. Then he opens a cupboard. The little girl is hiding inside. He sees her, and his crazy eyes light up, and he kills her too. The story then jumps back 5 years ago. We see Art, who is the killer clown, back then. He was just as ruthless and bloody then. A policeman comes to the scene and finds Art's severed head. He calls his team, but Art comes back to life and grabs the policeman from behind. The policeman shoots him, but it has no effect. Art gets on a train. The only other person on the train is a woman. Art starts to scare her. He's holding the policeman's head, still dripping with blood. It's terrifying. The woman is terrified. Then we see the scene inside a mental asylum. A guard hears a nurse screaming. He goes to the cell and finds a horrifying sight. A crazy patient named Vicky has given birth, but it wasn't a baby. It was Art's head. It's just as evil and dangerous as Vicky is. Art's head has already killed the nurse and is eating her body. Art was the one who mutilated Vicky years ago. Maybe she got infected with his craziness. Her face is all messed up, and she's eating her own flesh. She's become just as ruthless as Art. She's now his partner in crime. She drew a heart on the wall and wrote Vicky plus Art inside. The guard sees Art's head is there too. Before he can do anything, Vicky attacks him, and both of them show their brutality. Vicky jams a necklace in the guard's mouth and twists his jaw. Art rips off the guard's face. Art takes the head that Vicky gave birth to, grabs Vicky, and they leave. They get on a train and leave. They arrive at an empty house. Vicky looks at herself in the mirror, slams her head against it, and breaks it. She takes a shard of glass and sits in the bathtub, cutting her hand and filling the tub with her blood. Art sits across from her. She stays there like that for 5 years. The story jumps ahead 5 years to the present day. We see Sienna, a girl who's been in a mental hospital for 5 years. 5 years ago, Art killed all of her friends and everyone else. She was the one who cut off Art's head. She used a magical sword called Heaven's Black Sword to kill him. The whole thing traumatized her, and she's been in shock ever since. She's finally getting better and gets released. Her uncle brings her home from the hospital where she sees her aunt and her cousin. She's really close to them, and they are happy to see her. There are 2 workers at the empty house where Art and Vicky died. Their job is to demolish old buildings. They are there to survey the house and find Vicky and Art's bodies, which look like statues. There's a net over them, but it's not rotting. Before they can figure out what's going on, Vicky and Art come back to life and attack the workers, killing them mercilessly. Sienna's cousin finds her diary while cleaning out the house. He starts to read it, but Sienna grabs it from him and tells him not to read it anymore. Later, everyone is eating together, and Sienna sees her dead friend, the one that Art killed. Her friend is in terrible shape. Sienna doesn't show her friend to anyone else, which shows she's still traumatized by what happened. She's still thinking about it. We see Sienna's brother at his dorm, where he meets 2 friends. One of his friends is a host for a true crime podcast. She interviews people who have witnessed crimes. She sees Sienna's brother and starts chasing him, saying she wants to interview him for her show. She knows that Sienna and her brother encountered a bunch of clowns, and she's a fan of Art. She wants to know more about him. Sienna's brother is scared, but tells her he'll think about it. He gets a call from Sienna, who says she misses him and wants to see him. She asks him to come home. Back at the empty house, Art is looking for new ways to torture people. He wants to find the most brutal and cruel way to hurt someone. He knows that when you're cold, your wounds hurt more. So he decides to experiment on a mouse. He freezes it, then breaks it like a toy. He's excited about trying it out on a human. He goes to a bar where people are sitting. One man is dressed as Santa. At first, Art talks to him, telling jokes, but then he starts to torment him. When the people in the bar try to stop Art, he pulls out his bag, shoots them, and kills them. He saves one man for last, the one dressed as Santa. He ties the man to a chair and freezes his body. He then takes out a hammer and starts smashing him, like he's turning him into a statue. He crushes the man to death. Sienna gets an old letter from her brother. In the letter, he wrote that sometimes demons come into our world from hell. They don't do it by themselves, though. They need the help of a recently deceased, wicked person. He says that if there are demons, there must be angels who fight them. One of those angels is Sienna. She's the one who killed Art. If another demon comes, she can defeat it. Later, we see Sienna and her cousin at a mall. Sienna hears people screaming, which makes her think Art is back. She's afraid. Then she sees Art dressed as Santa, covered in blood. He's wearing a Santa mask. She knows it's him. He points at her and she's terrified. But suddenly her cousin comes from behind, and as Sienna turns around to see him, Art disappears. They go home, and Sienna tells her brother what happened. She says she saw Art at the mall, but she couldn't see his face because of the mask. She's sure it was Art because she can feel it. Her brother says it can't be true. She killed Art. He says he's forgotten about the whole thing and that she should forget too. But Sienna shows him her letter from him. She says that a demon needs the help of a dead, wicked person to enter the world. Art used a girl before, but this time he came through Vicky, which is why he was missing from the mental asylum. Her brother is scared and asks what they should do. Should they call the police, run away, or tell their aunt and uncle? Sienna says it's no use telling them. They won't believe her. They already think she's crazy. She needs to find the magical sword. That's the only way they can defeat the demons. Meanwhile, Art is at the mall dressed as Santa. He killed the real Santa and is wearing his beard and skin. He gives a girl a gift, and the other kids start lining up to get gifts from him. He gives out gifts to all the children, but his bag is empty. The parents start noticing that this Santa is a little strange and creepy. They see that he's not the real Santa. The guards come to kick Art out. But then the worst happens. The gifts that Art gave the children have bombs inside. When the children open the gifts, they explode. Everyone at the mall dies. The whole mall burns. Sienna finds the sword. She hides it in a gift box and her cousin sees it. Her cousin says she likes series, which surprises Sienna. She takes her cousin upstairs, and she asks how her cousin knew she likes series. Her cousin says he read her diary. He's sorry that he read it after she told him not to. He says he wanted to know what happened to her, and he wanted to know if what she wrote about Art the Clown was true. But he's just a kid. He says he shouldn't have gone in there. Sienna lies to her cousin and says she's sick. That's why she writes about all those crazy things. Her cousin asks if she killed Art with the sword. Sienna says no. Her cousin is disappointed. He says that everything went wrong. He was enjoying it. Sienna asks him to promise not to tell anyone about what he read in her diary. He agrees. At the dorm, Sienna's cousin tells his other friend that he wants to interview Sienna. He wants to know more about Art's story. He wants to feel the fear of being near someone so evil. He wants to know what it feels like to be close to a demon like Art. He wants to know how Art smiles. Art is listening to them from his hiding place. He hears this and thinks she wants to feel me close. Okay, I'll give her what she wants. Sienna is watching the news on TV. They are reporting on the explosion at the mall. They are saying it must be an act of terrorism, but Sienna knows it was Art. She's scared. She starts worrying about her brother and calls him, telling him about the explosion. She asks him to come home. He asks her if she brought the sword, and she says yes. He agrees to come home. Sienna's uncle goes to the dorm to pick up her brother. The host of the True Crime podcast, Sienna's brother's friend, is in the bathroom with her other friend. Art appears and attacks them with a chainsaw. He first attacks her friend, then he starts hacking at the host girl's head. He keeps hitting her until her face is crushed, but she's still alive. Art smiles at her and says, "I smile like this. Look, I fulfilled your wish. This is what it feels like to be close to me. So feel me." Then he kills her. He puts his glasses on her dead body. The other friend is lying on the ground, seriously hurt. Art goes into a brutal rage again. He uses the chainsaw to cut the boy in half and gives him a horrible, painful death. Sienna wakes up from a nightmare. It's 2 a.m., and she hears her aunt and uncle talking. She goes downstairs and finds out that it wasn't really her aunt and uncle. It's Vicky. She's using their voices. Art has killed her uncle and chopped off his head. He's nailing the rest of his body to the wall. A small, miniature version of Art attacks Sienna. She fights back, but she can't fight without the sword. She tries to grab the sword, but the little Art attacks her with a hammer and knocks her unconscious. When Sienna wakes up, she's tied to a chair. Her aunt is tied to a chair across from her. There's something wrapped up on a table in the middle of the room. Vicky walks over to her aunt and removes the tape from her mouth. Her aunt cries and asks where her daughter is and what Vicky did to her. Vicky points to Art and pulls off the wrapping from the table. It's a cage. Inside the cage is a severed head being eaten by rats. There's no flesh left on it, just bone. Her aunt can't recognize it. The aunt screams that it's a lie and that it can't be her son's head. Vicky starts torturing her. She forces a rat down the aunt's throat with a pipe, then rips out her throat to pull the rat out. She kills her aunt in front of Sienna. Vicky then puts a crown of thorns on Sienna's head. She tells Sienna's cousin that it's not really his head, and then she brings it over to Sienna. Art puts a pair of glasses on the head, which confirms that it's Sienna's brother. Sienna goes crazy. She starts screaming. Vicky tells her to shut up and listen. She says there's no God. Vicky starts to strangle Sienna. Vicky believes in Sienna's God and wants to break her spirit. She wants to control Sienna, but Sienna is too strong. She doesn't believe in God, and she doesn't let Vicky break her spirit. Vicky can't control her. Now, Vicky wants to kill Sienna's cousin in front of Sienna. Art puts a knife to his throat, but Sienna's cousin has an idea. He says they are angels and asks them to grant his wish. He says to kill him before he dies. He wants to open a gift. They both agree. The gift is the box that Sienna is holding the sword in. Sienna's cousin knows how to defeat the demons with the sword. He also knows that Sienna is the only one who can open the box. They give the box to Sienna. But before she can open it, Art hits her hand and breaks her fingers. She endures the pain and finally manages to open the box. Her hands heal instantly because she's holding the magical sword. It's her turn now. She takes out the sword, cuts Art's throat and throws the sword at Vicky. She stabs Vicky in the chest. Then she takes the sword out and stabs Vicky in the mouth. Finally, she beheads her. Vicky is dead, but Art tries to attack Sienna again. She has the magical sword, so she hits Art repeatedly and keeps blocking his attacks. She stabs him in the stomach, then pushes the sword against the wall. Vicky's blood turns into acid, melting the ground and making it erupt. Sienna's cousin is standing nearby, and a light path opens up beneath him. He falls, but he grabs hold of the wall and hangs on. Seeing her cousin in danger, Sienna leaves Art and runs to save him. She holds the sword and tells him to climb up, but his hand slips and he falls into hell, still holding the sword. Sienna is heartbroken. She promises herself that she'll go to hell and bring her cousin and the sword back. But then she realizes that Art is gone. The window is open. He ran away. That's bad news. Then we see a girl on a bus reading a book about demons. Art comes and sits down next to her. He starts to scare her. The bloodshed is about to begin again. To stop Art, Sienna has to go to hell. She has to get the magical sword back and kill Art. She'll have to chase him once again. With this terrifying ending, the movie ends. Thanks for watching.